I still remember the way the doctor looked at me. Kind. Calm. Professional. But behind his voice was something else, quiet finality. At your age, it's unlikely you'll walk again without full assistance. It's time to think about safety. A wheelchair. Maybe even long-term care. He said it gently. Like he didn't want to scare me. But it hit like a brick. Because I hadn't just lost my footing that day. I felt like I was losing my future. I was 72. I had slipped in the bathroom and fractured my hip. One wrong step. One fall. One sentence, and suddenly, everyone was treating me like it was over. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. You've had a good run. Now it's time to rest. But deep down, I wasn't ready to rest. I wasn't ready to be wheeled through the rest of my life. I still had stories to write, places to go, and yes, legs that wanted to try. And yet, 4 weeks, I did nothing. Lying in bed, barely moving. Not just because of the injury, but because of the voice in my head. You're old. You're broken. This is your new life now. That voice almost won. Until one morning I decided to rebel. I didn't stand. I didn't walk. I didn't even sit up fully. I just lifted my toes. In bed. Tiny. Stiff. But mine. And in that moment, I realized. I'm still here. I can still move. And that means I'm not done yet. This video is for anyone who's ever been told. It's too late. You're too old. You'll never walk again. Just accept it. Because maybe they said that to you. But they didn't know what you're capable of. You'll learn in this video. What happens when people stop believing in your recovery after 70? Why stillness after a fall can do more damage than movement. How I started healing with one small action. And how walking again changed not just my body, but my entire life. They said I'd never walk again. What I did instead shocked everyone, including me. There's a moment that happens after any serious injury past a certain age, and if you've been through it, you know exactly what I mean. People stop talking to you like a person recovering. And start talking to you like a person declining. It's subtle at first. Let me get that for you. Don't strain yourself. You just need to rest now. But then it builds. Let's talk about live-in help. Maybe sell the house? You shouldn't be alone anymore. And suddenly, you're no longer the strong, independent adult you've always been. You're seen as fragile, finished, or too old to bounce back. I was in rehab for a hip injury. Every nurse called me sweetie and honey, but no one asked me what I wanted. They acted like my recovery didn't matter. Like it wasn't even possible. That kind of treatment chips away at your dignity. It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you believe that maybe they're right. That you're no longer capable. That this is the beginning of the end. Here's the truth. After 70, people often stop seeing your potential. And start seeing only your limitations. But your body doesn't forget how to heal. It doesn't forget how to rebuild. It's just that no one's challenging it anymore. No one's saying, let's see what you can do. Instead, you're wrapped in softness. Padded chairs. Non-slip socks. Careful words. Cautious hands. And at first, that feels comforting. Until one day, it doesn't. Because you realize, comfort isn't the same as freedom. And that's what I missed most. Not just walking, but the freedom to choose, to move, to live. So when the world quietly decided I was done, I made a louder decision. I'm not done. And I don't need anyone else's permission to begin. In the next part, I'll share the exact moment that mindset shift happened and the first unusual thing I did to start turning my body and spirit around. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast. But it worked. There's a strange kind of stillness that sets in after a fall. Not the kind where you're healing, but the kind where your body and mind both say, "Don't move. It's safer that way." And so, I froze. For days, then weeks. Every shift in bed felt risky. Every attempt to sit upright was a battlefield between fear and effort. But the real turning point wasn't physical. It wasn't some miracle stretch or magic pill. It was a moment of frustration. I was lying in bed, overhearing two relatives in the next room. "She's going to need help now, probably long term. She'll never be the same. We just have to accept it." They weren't trying to be cruel. They were trying to be realistic. But it lit something in me. That night, I whispered to myself, "They don't get to decide who I am." And with all the strength I had, I moved my toes. One. Then the other. That small effort took 10 seconds. And it changed everything. Because for the first time in weeks, I did something on my own terms. The next day, I pushed a little further. Day 1, toes. Day 2, ankle rolls. Day 3, pressing my palms together while lying down. Day 5, scooting myself 2 inches to the side of the bed. No one was watching. No one was cheering. But deep inside, I was clapping for myself. Because each movement, however small, was a statement. I still live here. In this body. And I still have something to say. I wrote on a sticky note and taped it to my nightstand. Small things are not small. That became my motto. I didn't chase goals like walk a mile or be normal again. I chased action, autonomy, energy. And something magical happened. My body started responding. Not with speed. Not with grace. But with quiet, steady cooperation. Each day, the stiffness loosened. My breath deepened. My fear, though still there, took a back seat. That's when I knew. I wasn't broken. I was just waiting. Waiting for a reason to start and for someone to believe in me. That someone, it turns out, was me. In the next part, let's pause together. Because maybe you've had a fall. Or a diagnosis. Or a setback. And maybe you're wondering if it's worth even trying. I have one question for you. Let's stop here, just for a moment. Because maybe you've been through something. A fall. A surgery. A diagnosis. Or even just the quiet ache of aging. And deep down, you've heard the voice. Why bother? This is your new life now. You tell yourself you're being realistic. You don't want to disappoint yourself. You don't want to get hurt again. You don't want to hope and be let down. So you do nothing. But here's the question I had to face. Who would I become if I never even tried again? Not just physically. Emotionally. Spiritually. If I stayed in bed. If I never pushed past the discomfort. If I stopped imagining a better version of myself. Who would I turn into? I'll tell you what I saw in that question. I saw a future where I was still alive. But no longer living. Watching life through a window. Being cared for instead of contributing. Being spoken to gently, but never being challenged. Existing, but never moving, not just my legs, but my purpose. That vision scared me more than any fall ever could. Because I realized something. Fear of failure isn't the real danger. It's the fear of trying that keeps us stuck forever. So I ask you, what would your life look like if you gave up now? Not dramatically. Not in one big decision. But slowly. Silently. Step by step, by not stepping. Would you lose your strength? Your identity? Your joy? Your ability to surprise yourself? I believe we don't age into weakness. We age into whatever we repeat. And if we repeat avoidance, fear, and stillness, that becomes our life. But if we repeat even the smallest acts of courage, then strength, slowly, starts coming back. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to run marathons. You just have to stay in the conversation with your body. And keep it going, one whisper, one breath, one wiggle at a time. Because maybe they said you couldn't. But you still haven't answered for yourself. No, I didn't wake up one day and suddenly walk across the room. There was no dramatic music. No tearful movie moment. What there was process. One step. One shift. One brave decision, repeated, daily. And through it, I discovered 4 things that helped me walk again. Not just physically, but emotionally. 1. Visualization, moving before you move. Before I could stand, I had to see myself standing. I would close my eyes and imagine it. My feet planted, arms out for balance, taking one slow step across the living room. I did this for 5 minutes every day, even when I couldn't lift my legs. Why? Because the brain doesn't always know the difference between real movement and imagined movement. And by rehearsing, I was preparing. See it first. Then feel it. Then do it. That was my mantra. 2. Breath and balance while sitting. I couldn't walk yet, but I could sit on the edge of the bed. So I practiced balance breathing. Sit tall, both feet flat. Inhale deeply, arms out. Exhale slowly, arms in. Hold for 5 seconds without support. It looked like nothing. But to me, it was reclaiming center. Physically and emotionally. Because after a fall, the world feels unstable. Relearning balance, even in stillness, is a quiet revolution. 3. Trusted support, not doing it alone. Yes, I did a lot of the inner work on my own. But I had help. My daughter sat with me during my first chair stands. A physiotherapist gave me gentle, age-appropriate exercises. And an online group reminded me, you're not the only one rebuilding. Sometimes, all you need is one person saying, try again. I'll be right here. That's what gave me permission to take risks safely. For the first step, that wasn't actually a step. My breakthrough? I stood up from a chair and held the wall. That's it. I didn't walk. I didn't move forward. I just stood. And in that stillness, I cried. Because it wasn't just about muscles. It was about reclaiming my place in the world. From that moment on, my confidence began rebuilding like a house. Brick by brick, layer by layer. When I stood up after months, my legs shook, but my heart roared. I hadn't felt that alive in years. That's what movement does. It wakes up the parts of you that life had put to sleep. These 4 tools weren't fancy. They weren't expensive. But they were mine. And they brought me back to my feet. Next, I want to share the day I finally walked again. And the reaction that left me speechless. It wasn't a big moment. There was no ceremony. No doctor watching. No family gathered. Just me, a hallway, and the soft afternoon light falling through the window. I had done my chair stands. Held the wall. Moved my legs, inch by inch. And that day, something in me said, try one step. I stood. Waited. Took a breath. And shifted my weight forward. It wasn't graceful. My legs trembled. My arms reached for the wall instinctively. But I moved. Then, I moved again. 1 step. Then 2. Then 3. Tears welled up, not from pain, but from recognition. I'm walking. I am walking. And just as I reached the end of the hallway, I heard a soft gasp. It was my granddaughter. She had come in quietly, unnoticed. Her eyes wide. Hands over her mouth. She whispered, "Grandma, you're walking." I nodded. Too full to speak. And we both cried. Not because I had done something extraordinary, but because I had done something they thought I couldn't. Because I had defied expectation, quietly, gently, but undeniably. A comment I once read echoed through my mind that day. Sometimes the most radical thing an older person can do is stand up. And that's what this was. A revolution. Not for the world, but for myself. Since then, I've taken more steps. Some days more than others. Some with help. Some alone. But every step is now a reminder. They said I couldn't. I did anyway. Let me tell you this. People will underestimate you after 70. Doctors might be realistic. Family may be protective. Strangers may be patronizing. But you know what still lives inside you. And if you've been afraid to take that first step again, please know that strength you once had, it's not gone. It's just waiting. You know what stayed with me after that first walk? Not just the joy, not just the pride, but the look in people's eyes. They weren't just surprised. They were reminded. Reminded that strength doesn't belong to the young. That courage isn't limited to athletes. That healing isn't reserved for those under 50. It belongs to anyone who refuses to stay down. You'll never walk again. They said it with data, with care, with professional logic. But they didn't know my story. They didn't know my spirit. And they didn't know how deeply I still wanted to move. To live on my own 2 feet. And maybe, just maybe, they don't know that about you either. Maybe you've been told to slow down, to accept help, to stop trying. And maybe you've believed it even for a moment. But let me say this clearly. You are not done. You are not broken. You are not a statistic. You are a living, breathing body, capable of surprising the world and yourself. I'm not walking marathons. I'm not dancing on stages. But I'm walking on my own. And with every step, I remind myself, I did this. I chose this. I became this. And you can too. So if you're lying in bed, recovering from a fall, or staring at a walker with resentment, or just feeling like the world has moved on without your strength, know this. Your next step doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. I'd love to hear your story. Have you ever been told you can't and proved them wrong? Or are you still waiting for that first moment to believe again? Share it in the comments. Because someone watching this video may need your voice today. And if this story gave you hope, if it whispered, maybe I can, into your heart, subscribe to Longevity Talks. For stories that respect your strength, honor your fears, and walk with you wherever you are in your journey.